Hello fellow audiophiles, I am Wave Theory, and these are the Apos Ray tubes, or at least the boxes that they come in. The 6SN7 Select, which sells for 65 US dollars as an individual unit and 150 US dollars as a matched pair, and the 12AU7s, which are $80 for an individual tube and $180 for a matched pair. These were given to me ultimately by Apos Audio. The 6SN7 I was informed I could keep as it was sent to me. The 12AU7 was originally a loan and then became something that I could hang on to long term. Even so, you're going to get my unvarnished opinion about these. I also had the opportunity to speak with Nelson Wu of Apos Audio. He is their director of products, to ask him questions about what are the origins of these things, because people are wondering. And in tube world here, the tube segment of our audio hobby anyway, the origins of tubes are really important. And so I have some things to say about that too here, which we will get to after shameless self-promotion. So, there's a lot to talk about in this review here. Even though they are just vacuum tubes, there's a fair amount of things to say. So check out timestamps and all of that. And without further ado, oh, I should add that the links in the description below for these will be affiliate links. If you like my descriptions of these and you want to buy them, please consider using those affiliate links so I can get a few dollars back to help support the channel. And I use affiliate link money only to support the channel and to not just line my own pockets. All right. So with that, we'll go ahead and do shameless self-promotion, and we'll come back on the other side and we will talk about the Apos Ray tubes. Here we go.
Hi, I'm Wave Theory's human companion, and he wants you to know that your support of this YouTube channel helps keep the reviews coming. If you enjoy Wave Theory's honest, thorough style, then make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and check out the links in the description below to sign up for the Patreon or send him a tip through PayPal. All right, enjoy the musings.
In this video, I do want to talk a little bit about that conversation that I had with Nelson Wu, who again is the director of products for Apos Audio and is the person overseeing their vacuum tube efforts and all of that. And I have some important things to say there, I think, so I think you're going to want to stick around and watch that here, and we'll probably get to that first just to have that framing the rest of the video when I got to the reviewing the build and the sound and all of these too. So what happened here chronologically in this video, and to be upfront about this here, is I got the tubes and I put them in the tube-based gear that I have, which you will see in the video, to test these out with, and did my listening tests and basically did all of the sonic and sound and build impressions of these before I talked to Mr. Wu. Right, and I even recorded a video of my review, of my sound impressions and all of that before I talked to Mr. Wu. You're going to recognize it because it'll be an overhead view with me talking about these and all that and moving my hands around probably more than is necessary as I'm holding these things, all that. And so I'm just going to give that to you. Untouched. I did not go back and edit it at all after or change any of the content at all. From my talk with Mr. Wu, okay? But what I do want to do is, again, recap some of the things that he told me here up front to kind of help you understand a little bit more about what's going on with that sound stuff and why I'm saying things about value and all that I am. Now, for the impatient out there, what I will say is I'll just go ahead and give you a quick roundup of my thoughts here on the sound of these, and then you can watch the details, and then we'll come back to what Mr. Wu said here. So, the 6SN7 Select, I think, is pretty price appropriate at 65 US dollars for a lot of entry-level and mid-fi kinds of sound gear. It does a little bit of the warming and thickening of the sound that is stereotypical of the tube sound. And I'm going to drop here that I say stereotypical of the tube sound because warm and relaxed and thick is, again, kind of what most people think of when they hear the tube sound. But I really want to encourage everyone in the audience out there to start breaking from the habit of assuming that tube audio gear has a specific sound. Okay, the sound that tube audio products can create, whether they be DACs, amplifiers, or whatever, the sound that you get from those can be as widely varied and diverse as anything on the solid state side can be as well. It runs the gamut from warm, relaxed, and thick and smooth, okay, to very neutral, very incisive, maybe even leaning bright and all of that at times. So that's why I'm going to throw that out there. Keep that in your mind here as we go through this video. But this Apos Ray 6SN7 Select tube does a little bit of that warming and all of that. More details in the sound description coming up. The 12AU7s, they are very good. I don't buy or at least at the time that I did the video, and it may still be true as I film this, but Apos Audio's website says that these do the same kinds of thing to the sound. They warm it, they thicken it a little bit, they give it that stereotypical tube sound, and I did not find that to be the case with these. These actually brightened the sound up a little bit, just a little bit, not terribly so, but they also usually enhanced the spatial presentation and the holography and made things sound more three-dimensional and brought some of the resolution and the details a little bit more forward and all of that. These are excellent tubes, but I think you have to spend some money on your signal chain and scale up the quality of your signal chain to really start to hear the benefits that these are giving you over some cheaper competitors out there. I will unpack that more in the sound part of the video too. So let's come back to what I was talking about here with my conversation with Nelson Wu. And the reason that I wanted to talk to him out there is I got the sense that Apos was being a little bit, frankly, cagey about the origins of their tubes. And my understanding of the tube side of this audiophile hobby is that those who are serious about it anyway care greatly about the origins of their tubes, who makes them, where they came from, and is the tube that they're buying what is actually claimed that they are buying? Because there have been some retailers out there that are a little bit unclear, let's say, and maybe not as upfront as they should be about the origins of their tubes, and they make claims that the tubes are something that they are not. Okay. So I wanted to ask about that, and I did get some answers, which I will share here in a moment. But I think more importantly, I want to say that in my conversation with Nelson Wu here, he came across as just incredibly genuine and as someone who is just genuinely passionate about the audiophile hobby and about vacuum tubes and what vacuums can do for audio. Okay, vacuum tubes can do for audio. And so his goal and Apos's goal in general with this Ray tube effort is to increase the options and availability of vacuum tubes to we audiophiles, okay? And there's good reason for that. One, the stock of new old stock tubes, and this was always going to happen, okay? For those who don't know this, new old stock or NOS tubes are old tubes, old production tubes that were made decades ago, like in the 40s, 50s, 60s, early 70s, that kind of thing, that never sold. They were just part of a stock that didn't ever get sold off, and so they became new old stock. New in the fact that they've never been used, old stock in that they haven't been made in 40 plus years, okay? Maybe even 50 plus years, okay? So that stock is inherently limited, and it was always going to dry up, and we are kind of in a mode now where, especially with some tube types out there, that is happening. The other side of this is that buying new production tubes right now is also difficult. That is for a couple of reasons, but one of the big ones is that Russia has been one of the biggest makers of vacuum tubes out there. And I filmed this in January of 2024 when the war between Russia and Ukraine has been going on for nearly 2 years now and does not have show a whole lot of signs of loosening up. So we've had nearly 2 calendar years of Russia's efforts going into putting their vacuum tubes into their military machinery and all of that, and they're not available on the audiophile market. So the new production tube availability out there, options and availability is shrinking. So Apos has said with their Ray, they told me anyway, with their Ray tube efforts that their primary goal is to give us more options of tube types and levels of tube ultimately, and also like just make tubes more readily available. Okay, so and just increase the options and increase the stock, in other words. And these two right here are just their first foray into that effort. So I was asked not to go into details about like what their long-term plans are beyond that, how they're going to go about doing this or anything like that, other than to just say generally they have big plans for these tube efforts, and these are the starting points. Okay, so stick around and stay tuned, because there's going to be more to come as time goes on. All right, now let's return then to the origin of these things here. Where do they come from? So there are limited OEM makers out there, and Apos has not shared the name of where they got these, which OEM manufacturer they got these from. And they asked me to also not share that information, not because they are like necessarily wanting to hide it or be dishonest about it, but it's because they don't want to be pigeonholed into thinking that they only are going to get their tubes from that OEM manufacturer. They are they don't want to limit themselves to a particular OEM manufacturer, and they don't necessarily want their name tightly associated with just one OEM manufacturer, because as their tube efforts grow, as was described to me, they may very well go to a different OEM supplier. And even with that, okay, their criteria for which tubes get selected, like they have Apos and Ray tubes, they have their own unique set of measurement criteria that they use to filter out which tubes they want to put their name brand on to sell. So they measure things like, what is the voltage output of the vacuum tubes that are coming off of this OEM factory line? What is the power draw of these tubes? And crucially, they also have someone doing listening tests. They have real human ears listening to a sampling of these things that they have selected to make sure that the audible results are matching up with what their measurements are telling them and all that sort of thing. So those criteria, which they did not give me the specific criteria for what they are looking for in terms of voltage output or the specific power draw they're looking for or that sort of thing, because those are trade secrets, and they have the right to keep those separate so that no one, horns in on their territory there on that one. But the point that I'm making here is that that is a unique set of measurements to Apos. So even though they are sourcing their tubes from OEM suppliers, from a very small number of OEM suppliers that anyone else selling vacuum tubes out there may also be using, they have their own unique and different set of criteria to select which tubes get their name and make it to their store that are likely to be different than what other manufacturers are doing. So that is to say that if you are under the assumption that these tubes are just someone else's tubes that these guys came along and put their name on, stop thinking that, okay? They have their own unique criteria and unique goals for what they came for here. So there may very well not be a cheaper equivalent out there to these. And in fact, it's very unlikely for them to be cheaper alternatives out there that are, that sound like these sound and do the things that these do for the price and so forth. Okay, so and Mr. Wu made a very interesting point to me on this. It's like, if you find yourself needing to know exactly where these came from and like what the name of it is, like the name of the OEM supplier or whatever, if you find yourself really needing to know that information, why? What are you going for? Okay, most likely what you are looking for, and we all do this, I did this, and I thought this was a really insightful point from Mr. Wu here, right? Like, the reason you'd want to know that information, where these things come from, is because you want some assurance of quality and value, right? You want to know that you're getting a certain quality of sound and that you're not getting ripped off, right? That you are getting a fair product at a fair price, okay? And that's completely reasonable. to want to do, and so forth. And like, I mean, and it's true. Like, we hear names in our hobby. Like, you hear the name Sennheiser, your brain goes to, there's a certain kind of sound. You hear the name Biodynamic, there's a certain kind of sound that's different than Sennheiser's, but like you get that, right? Topping, you hear the name Topping, it's like there's a sound that comes with that you're like, ah, yeah, okay, that's a topping, which is different from a sound that comes from, say, shit, okay? And you know, that sort of thing. You say vacuum tube and people are already starting to associate a sound with just that kind of a name. So Apos was trying to avoid that trap, for one thing. And also, like, just to come back to the point he was making here, it's that it's extremely important here to not, like, they're not wanting to get pigeonholed, but yes, like, the reason you're asking these questions is because you want to be assured of quality, kind of what it's going to sound like, and value. Let me assure you that there is quality and value here in the right circumstances, which I will unpack. And so Apos and Ray Tubes and all that are inviting all of us to just give them a chance to have their own sound and all of that without worrying about a specific name or anything like that. So I'm just going to leave that there. Listen to my review upcoming on this here, like coming here later in the video, and just make your own decision from there, whether or not you think the value and all that, whether they have earned their trust, or whether they should earn your trust. And these are really good starting points, I will say, for their tube efforts. So they have earned at least a benefit of a doubt for me that we need to give them a chance to prove what they are doing with their tubes on their own without getting too bent out of shape about what is the exact name of the OEM supplier that they are using. Okay, so with that, I hope that is enough context to couch what follows, and we will go ahead and cut right to me talking about the sound and the build and all of that. Here we go. The Ray tubes come in pretty nice packaging and they are presented well. So I will open these up here in a moment and like look at how they're packaged and all of that. And I think we will start with my evaluation of the 6SN7 Select tube. So I'll do the unboxing and show you that kind of thing. But in terms of packaging and the literature that is provided inside, they are pretty much the same. So we'll look at that for the 6SN7, then we'll just look at how the 12AU7 are put in there, and then we'll talk about the sound of each of these two things individually. All right, so let's move these out of the way for the moment. A little bit bigger box, so it's a little bit easier to see this on the camera here. So Ray 6SN7 Select from Apos. Pretty nice box. Have you hugged your ears today? Sounds physically awkward. Okay. Other stuff on the box here. The bottom just has Apos label like that. Red, orange on the side. Okay. Open it up, and we get this nice little info booklet here, and some interesting things in here I want to show you. So we'll look at that in a moment. There's the tube. I will pull it out in just a little bit. Let's take a quick look at what's going on inside this thing here. Great sound doesn't happen in a vacuum. Great sound, cross that out, happens in a vacuum. You guys, I think, know at this point, I'm a physics professor. I know what you're doing here, but come on. In this world of science denial, this rubbed me the wrong way just a little bit. Anyway, here we are. These aren't just any vacuum tubes. They've been hand-selected for optimal performance, right? And so forth. And then here's another key line. Fewer than 5% of tubes make the cut. And then for matching pairs, an additional rigorous process is undergone to ensure accurate sound staging and channel balance. That's a key point, because let's come back to the pricing on this, which I discussed at the top, but let's make another point about that. Individually, the 6SN7 Select tubes are selling on Apos's website, again, link down in the description, for $50 US, $49.99 if you want to be super specific. They have like a price of $64.99 with a line through it, and then they show the 50. A matched pair of these is currently selling for 150 US dollars, or 149.99. Okay, so that suggests to me that there is extra cost associated with doing the matching, right? Because if you take $50 and you double it, you get 100, that's short of 50. Even if you take $65, double it, that's short of 150. Okay, so at minimum, it sounds like Apos is claiming that their matching process adds $20 at minimum to the cost of the 6SN7 tubes. Okay, so I don't know if that is necessarily true. I don't know if that is standard practice in the tube world. I'm trying to look into that, and if I learn it before I publish this video, I will put it elsewhere in the video whether or not that is standard practice. Right? But just throwing that information out there for now. Interestingly, if you buy a matched quad set of the 6SN7, so in other words, 4 matched tubes, let's see, I think, like, what was it? One of the shit Freya's preamps had 4 tubes in it. Anyway, if you do that, then the price is 330 US dollars. So even at the $65 price, if we just go with that, all right, which again, it's currently selling for 50 as of the filming of this video, but just using that worst case scenario, $65 per unit price. Okay, you quadruple that cost, that is $260, which, you know, is, let's see, did I get that right? Yeah, 65 times 2 is 130, double that, it's 260. So they're essentially saying that now it costs $70 to match to quad match these things, which, you know, it's not necessarily a linear scaling up in the matching of price there. Okay, anyway. Other interesting things in here. All right, this page, and I won't read it out loud. You can pause this and read it if you want, but this page suggests to me that these tubes are custom made for Apos. Like, I don't know who the OEM supplier is yet as of the filming of this right now. I'm hoping I will be able to talk to the director of the Apos person in charge of all of this before this video goes public, and then I can splice in answers to that question. But this suggests to me that that is in fact the case, that whoever the OEM supplier is, they are making these tubes to an Apos spec. All right, and then this just talks about you need to let your tubes warm up 5 minutes before each use. And I think this is an important point for tube users out there, particularly if you're new to tubes. Vacuum tubes do need a little bit of time to warm up, right? To actually literally heat up, because they do vacuum tube things, right? They shoot electrons through the vacuum in there once the heating element is at its full temperature, and it takes a little bit to get up to that. Not super long, as they say. Give it about 5 minutes before you really start using or listening to music, or at least judging the music critically that you are listening to. All right. But also turn your tubes off when you're done if you can, because the tube life is usually good for about 10,000 usage hours or active hours, so being on, powered on for 10,000 hours. And if you don't turn your tubes off, you're going to chew through 10,000 hours in less calendar time than if you turn your tubes off when they're not in use for extended periods of time. My personal practice with tube devices, if I can, is if I know I'm going to be listening to a tube device on a given day, I turn it on, and then I leave it on until I am done for the day, and I know that I am done with that tube device, and then I'll turn it off for overnights, or just to be there ready for the next time that I need it, right? Because I'm listening to different gear all the time. It's not necessarily the next day I'm going to come right back to it. All right, and then when you get a brand new tube, as I mentioned, that heating element in there, and the way vacuum tubes generally work is like that heating element excites electrons, which shoots them through the vacuum tube, okay? And that's how amplification things happen in a vacuum tube. But to get those electrons to fire off at the rate through which the tube is, at which the tube is spec'd, requires some initial break-in so that like the chemistry and all of that, the chemistry and the physics that's going on the inside works at its optimum level. So with new production tubes like this, it can really vary. Apos claims about 6 hours of burn-in. The 12AU7s came to me used, so I was not able to confirm that, but I think 6 hours is a decent estimate for the 6SN7 variant there. Okay. Let's see. Although there are some new production tubes that can take forever. Like I had a pair of Genelex Gold Lions in my Monolith Liquid Platinum for a while, and those things took like nearly a solid week of just straight being powered on and burning to like finally settle in and reach their normal behavior. So it really can vary with new production tubes. Just be prepared for that kind of a thing anytime you buy these or any other new production tube. All right. Let's look at the tube itself. Nice box, nice padding in here, so this is well protected. Okay, tube comes out, Ray 6SN7 Select. Okay, one thing that I noticed here, and you can still kind of see it, sorry for my reflection, you have to look at my face after all, but there's a little bit of like residue left over because they put the sticker for the handwritten measurement results right on top of this thing here. I'll splice in a photo so you can see that. Apos, I would really prefer you not do that because I have to peel this off lest, it like start to burn or something on there. Like I don't know if it get hot enough to do that, but it's also just annoying to look at. Put that sticker somewhere else, like down here maybe. I don't know, or put it on the box. I don't know why you had to stick it on the top of the tube. Anyway, okay. The tube itself is pretty well made. Okay, I got the Apos logo there, Ray 6SN7 Select. Okay, and then I don't know if this is Bakelite or ceramic material down here. Okay, but there it is. 6SN7 are nice because they only fit in the tube socket one way, because you see that little groove thingy right there, a little notch. Okay, fits in there. It's a well-made tube, really. There's one build issue that I noticed with this. The 6SN7 device that I have on hand, and it's just off screen here, so let me grab it, is the Shit Saga preamplifier. And I have a tube in it right now. The tube that is in it is a PS Vane Hi-Fi Series 6SN7, which I'm going to compare with the Ray tube here in just a moment. But one thing that I want you to see is, so this is the PS Vane tube in here right now. To pull this out, just gently rock it a little bit, and it pops right out. Okay? Look at this. This one I know has the Bakelite base here. I can't remember what material this is. This one is heavier, so I think this might be a ceramic. Anyway, this base right here is of a smaller diameter. Let's see if I can show it to you. Line it up with the camera well enough that you can see it. It is of a smaller, it's not working too well. You can see it with the naked eye. It's hard as maybe you can tell right here. This part right down here, okay, is of a smaller diameter than the corresponding part on the Ray tube, okay? Why does that matter? Well, you see on the Saga here, right? It has a recessed and a loose potentiometer. I just tightened this up, I swear. All right, we'll worry about that later. That's not part of the review. All right, this has a recessed tube socket in there. And it's, a somewhat deep recess and all of that in there. The Ray tube fits in there just fine, okay? Goes right in. What I noticed, though, is that it's super tight around the base of this thing. And so pulling it out is more difficult than it is with the PS Vane tube, right? Because there's less room to rock it back and forth to loosen it up, as is common practice with removing any vacuum tube of any size on a device, right? So I just kind of have to very carefully, and this really worried me. It's like, it's much, it feels like I have to squeeze this thing so hard that it's going to break. Now, it didn't the first time I did this, or the first couple of times, because I did some comparisons, but oh, there it goes, okay? That's something that you might need to be aware of. If you are a frequent tube roller, okay, and you have a recessed tube socket like the Saga does, or like the Lyre 3 does. I think the newer Lyre Plus, this has been redesigned here, and I think it's almost like a bowl shaped that's recessed in there, so it may not be quite as much of a concern here with this size. But anyway, what kind of space do you have around your tube socket might be a question given the slightly larger diameter of the base of this one as compared to some others. All right, that's enough of that. Let's talk sound. All right, the signal chain that I use, and then we'll also bring in a couple of others here. This is the PS Vane Hi-Fi Series 6SN7. I bought these as a matched set over a year ago now, when it was about $130 for a matched pair. Right now on Amazon, and I'll put the link down below, these guys come as a matched pair for about $92, $93, somewhere right around in there. All right, this one, believe it or not, is just the generic 6SN7 tube from the Dark Voice that I used to have. When I sold my Dark Voice, I sweetened the deal by putting a Tongue Soul new production tube in it, and kept this one. So I pulled this back out to do a comparison, because I think some people might have a Dark Voice, or like the new X Duo, what is it, the TA26 maybe, that's the Dark Voice clone, uses these, and you know that, so you might want to think about moving from this to this. So this doesn't really have a price on it that I know of, because it just comes with other units, but just kind of like as the baseline stock, you know, comes with a lot of units. Like, what kind of step up do you get with these is the question I was trying to answer with this. All right. To do the evaluation of the 6SN7, this is the only 6SN7 device that I have currently. So I used the Saga as a preamp, and I used my Hugo 2 to-go combination as the DAC, ran that into the Saga's input, and then output that to Headamp GSX Mini, because I know that the Mini is very, very source transparent. It's very headphone picky. So I got a headphone that I knew would work well with it, and then trusted the Mini's source transparency to reveal the differences between the tubes, and it did. And then I used the Hi-Fi-Man HE1000 SE as the headphone, because again, it matches well with the Mini. It's also very resolving and will show me sonic differences on the tubes. Okay. The Ray Select, compared to solid state, here, the solid state on this, because another nice thing about the Saga here is you hit this button and you cycle between pure solid state operation or sending things through the signal through the tube. Okay. Compared to the solid state on the Saga here, the Ray tube is a little bit warmer. It brought the mid-bass region forward just a touch. And that was, yeah, so it just created a little bit warmer sound. The sound stage also, like, got closer to me. It got bigger than the solid state flavoring of the Saga, but the soundstage got closer to me. Like, the perceived distance from my head to where music was coming from, it felt like it got closer. Also, the images, the sonic images, so like if there's a centered vocalist, for example, felt like the width and the space that image took up widened just a little bit. So, and that happened all through the sound field. There was still really good coherence. Bigger soundstage in general, closer to me, still very good like lateral and depth coherence to the soundstage, but these individual sonic images were just a little bit bigger than they were from the solid state version of the Saga. A little bit more, a little bit smoother presentation also from this, like just a little bit more blended together, a slightly more wet presentation, meaning that there was a little bit less separation between like the decay of a previous sound and the attack of a subsequent sound. Okay, and so it just sounded a little bit smoother and as a result fuller. Now it's not wet or sloppy. I don't want you to think that. Like this is one of the things that is a bit stereotypical of the tube sound that the Ray brings in, is that they are a little bit wetter, all of that. So like they do kind of blend together the trailing ends of notes with the leading edges of the next note a little bit more than some solid state designs do, and that does this a little bit, but it's not over the top. I think it's done to a tasteful degree on there. Okay, so I mean, this is a pretty decent tube and all of that on its own, and it is an upgrade from something like this. So let's talk comparisons here real quick. So the stock dark voice tube, okay, has a similar character to the Ray tube in terms of what it does to the sound. This also brought the warmth region forward a little bit. It also made the soundstage bigger than the solid state on this and brought it closer to my head, at least in terms of perception. And it also like wetted the sound a little bit, okay? Kind of did that thing where it blended trailing edges into leading edges a little bit more. Definitely more than the solid state, and I think a little bit more than the Ray. So this one was like not as clean or as clear and sounded a little bit sloppier than the Ray tube as well. I thought that the tonal balance through the treble was better on the Ray than it was the stock dark voice. Also, cymbal crashes and all of this on the stock dark voice could get a little bit excessively shimmery and a little bit peaky sounding, where they were smoother and more natural in their timbre on the Ray tube, I thought. Okay. So anyway, that does say like this Ray tube is, in my opinion, it doesn't really change the tonality or like the frequency response or like a whole lot of the overall character. It's a very similar sound to this one, just technically better. So in other words, worth the upgrade. All right, these two is a very interesting comparison here. They are, at least by pricing, reasonably close to each other. I know this one only comes in a match pair for some reason. Okay, but you divide the match pair price in half and you're getting pretty close to the value of this, okay? The way the PS Vane changed the sound as compared to the solid state here is, it's different than what the Ray does. This did not bring the warmth region forward as much as the Ray does, so this does not sound as warm. It made the sound stage a little bit bigger too, not quite as big as the Ray does. And it made the individual like sonic images slightly larger and like wider, a little bit kind of like the Ray, but not nearly to the same level. This one changed the character and the tone of the sound the least from the solid state, the pure solid state on the Saga. But it did add a fair amount of holography, and it did like, so the solid state version of the Saga can sound just a little bit compressed around the center image, so it's not quite 3 blobby, but it is a little bit. Like there's left, there's right, there's like this center mass, and then there's kind of just a little bit of absence in left center and left right, okay? All 3 tubes help flesh that out. This one also did it, but it did it without making the sonic images sound a little bit wider and not bringing them as close to me. So again, it did those things, just not to the extent that the Ray or the dark voice tube did. Okay, and then again, it also is the more neutral in its frequency response, and I think it was just like, it sounds a little bit more holographic to me. That could be a psychoacoustic effect due to the fact that like this one, the Ray, widens the individual sonic images, so then there's like less space to separate them, all that, where there's a little bit more space to separate them here with the PS Vane. And all that, but like for classical recordings and like big orchestras and that sort of thing, like this just sounded a little bit more believable to me in terms of placing things and all of that. But I sometimes think I preferred the Ray for like rock, pop, metal, like those kinds of things, just because like the bigness of it gave it this immediacy and this fun factor and like the in-the-faceness of it, while at the same time not being overly fatiguing and all of that. It just gave it a different flavor that engaged me a little bit more with that kind of music, all that. So These are two pretty good tubes. They do things a little bit differently. They are both clearly a sonic upgrade over the stock dark voice. They cost about the same, so it's just kind of like, what is your preference? What kind of music are you going to listen to in terms of like what happens here? They're pretty even on resolution and that sort of thing. Treble smoothness, timbre, and all of that, they are both solid there. So it's just kind of, what do you prefer there? They're both a good upgrade and, you know, priced appropriately, I think. Okay, shall we look at the 12AU7s? Let's look at the 12AU7s. All right, here are the 12AU7s and the three primary devices that I used to listen to them on in comparison to PS Vane Art Series 12AU7S, which we'll get out here to talk a little bit more about in a moment. All right, this box, or this little booklet, says exactly the same things as the 6SN7 booklet does, just with smaller pages. Okay, so yeah. All right, and then the tubes sit in there nicely like that. We'll just get one of them out to look at for build comparisons, all of that. All right. Apos label, 12AU7, Ray, all that kind of thing. Okay, so again, these are $80 for an individual unit, $180 for a matched pair. If you buy these in a bundle, with the, like for example, the X-Duo TA20 Plus, these get marked down to about $150 for a matched pair. Okay, not a whole lot to say about the build other than like it's a 12AU7 tube, right? Okay, it's reasonably well constructed, pins are well spaced, etc., etc. Okay. Sonic impressions on this one. So again, I've got the three devices here. KN-HA1A Mark II, which you can see the empty slot there. It's uncovered because I had to swap these out. Okay, uses a 12AU7s there, a pair of them there. The X-Duo TA20 Plus, which I did a very recent review of. You can kind of see it right here. That's the stock tube that's in there. But these use the 12AU7s. And then the Project Ember here, which I reviewed. This is Garage 1217 Project Ember. It uses a single wide variety of tubes compatible with 12AU7s. So I tried those in here as well. Okay, what did I notice? Pretty consistently, the 12AU7s, first of all, they are different. They have a different sonic character, in my opinion, than the 6SN7. So just because these sound a certain way does not mean that these sound a certain way. So that's something to keep in mind. Where the 6SN7 I just described, like it warmed the sound a little bit, the Rays don't. To me, they brighten the sound a bit. There might be a hair of additional warmth in there compared to solid state or some other tubes that are out there. But for the most part, these kind of seemed to take a solid state sound, or a stereotypical solid state sound, which is kind of like more like just kind of dead neutral, and just make it more technical. And what I mean by that is like these things kind of tightened up the spatial presentation, usually made them slightly more holographic. Okay, they brightened the sound a little bit, which I think in some ways helped with the perception of the spatial presentation improving. And they also like had a little bit of extra perceived clarity. I think again that might be because of the little bit of extra brightness. If you are familiar with the Genelex Gold Lion tubes, those can be very bright and really enhance the treble coming out. Too much for my ears, but it can, like, that's what this does. These take a step in that same direction, but just don't go as far. Okay, and so that's the big thing that I noticed about the sound here. So like Apos's website talks up like the warmth and the smoothness and all of that of their Ray tubes. And with the 6SN7, I think that's mostly on point. With the 12AU7, I think it's more, they're more bright. Okay, they brighten the sound a little bit. They do tighten up the spatial presentation and all of that. Again, usually compared to like the stock tubes in any of these, they will do that and all that. So they do offer some improvements, but I wouldn't call it warmth and fullness and that sort of thing. They're also not particularly dry or wet. They're kind of more like right down the middle. on that as well. Okay. So what I've described here is like what these do in comparison with a lot of stock tubes, right? They brighten the sound a little bit, certainly over these X2O stocks that come in the TA20 Plus. The Project Ember comes with a 12AX7 stock, I believe. Anyway, it's compatible with a huge variety of tubes, both 6 volt and 9 volt and all of that. So, or 6 volt and 12 volt, I should say. So, it's a little bit different thing there. But let's talk about the comparison with the PS Vane Art Series 12AU7S's, which are currently $76 for a matched pair on Amazon. I will put a link in the description down below. Okay. Both of these clear upgrades over the stock tubes that will come with something like this or something like this. Okay. That much is clear. Okay. The PS Vane, though, will slightly warm the sound compared to some stock tubes. Maybe not all, but like these are warmer sounding than these. These are slightly thicker sounding than the Rays. To me, they are less treble present. So I found them to be a little bit less fatiguing, and all of that. But other than that, like the Rays, I think are still a little bit more technically accurate and a little bit more technically correct in things like imaging and separation. Like these are a little bit more holographic, right? They do a little bit better separating sonic images. I did not notice the distance from head to where sound is coming from change with either of these tubes like I did with the 6SN7 on the Saga. Okay, but they both will tighten up the imaging and the separation as compared to many stock tubes, and then the Rays will do it yet a little bit more than the PS Vanes. I did prefer the treble tonality and timbre of the PS Vane over the Ray, though, because I could find the Ray get a little bit fatiguing and a little bit shimmery in the upper treble. Like crash cymbals, to me, sounded a little bit smoother and more natural on the PS Vane, where they were a little bit more forward aggressive and not quite as even sounding on the Rays. However, below that range, like lower treble sounds, like the sound of a closed hi-hat hit, for example, I thought the Rays sounded a little bit more smooth and a little bit more natural and a little bit more realistic in their timbre than the PS Vane did. And I think through the mids and even down through the bass and all of that, the Rays were they were a little bit more resolving. There's a little bit more texturing coming out of the sound. Again, a little bit better spatial separation, a little bit more even tonality, and a little bit more realistic tonal balance. Okay, a little bit more realistic timbre. From the mid treble on down, it just falls apart a little bit in the upper regions of the treble. Not a lot. Okay, like it's not a wholesale just brick wall fall off there. It's just not quite as put together in the really top up ends as the PS Vane is. So these did get a little bit fatiguing to me after a while in a way that these did not, but I did appreciate the extra clarity and the spatial separation and all of that on these. I wish that I could have combined the slightly warmer tone of these with the technical accuracy of this, and also the treble smoothness of these with the technical accuracy of the Ray as well. Okay. So, I mean, those are kind of my thoughts there on the sound on this, of the Ray tube. So the Ray tube, again, is going to be a clear upgrade over many stock tubes. I think from a technical sense, it is also a slight upgrade overall from the PS Vane, although it's not a wholesale upgrade because there are still a couple of things that I think the PS Vane does a little bit better than the Ray. So at this point, I think we need to talk about value and like, should you be interested in these and all of that? And the PS Vane here, I think, is a really good value. $76 for a pair of these, and how they can like change the sound just a little bit and improve the technicalities over numerous stock tube options and all of that. This one is a no-brainer to like start your tube rolling journey. I cannot say definitively on the Ray one way or the other whether I think it's really truly worth $180 for a pair or it isn't. Now, that's me being honest, right? It's not a slam dunk in either direction. If it were a slam dunk that it was worth $180 for the pair, I would tell you. And if you watch my channel, you know that's true. If I was really confident that it was not a slam dunk good deal at $180 per pair, I would also tell you that. I'm just not sure on this one. And let me kind of unpack a little bit more why. The differences that I heard on the TA20 Plus between these two were small. Right? They were noticeable. A lot of the things that I just described were coming out just a tiny little bit. So $150 for the bundle deal, or just if you buy this first and then later decide to roll to these and spend $180 for the pair, that might be asking a bit much. I think that's not necessarily the fairest price. I would grab a set of these to stick in there and call it a day. Where I started to notice a difference, and a growing difference at that, is this Project Ember right here is a very good preamp, right? It's as a headphone amp anymore, but the preamp section on it is very good. So I showed you my GSX Mini earlier, and I showed you my Hexies, right? So I did kind of the same thing for one step of the testing with the Project Ember here, where I got my Hugo 2 and 2Go combo, RCA output of this into the Project Ember, and then preamp output of the Ember into the GSX Mini, driving the HE1000 SE, and that is where I really more clearly heard a difference between these two to a larger degree than I did with the TA20 Plus, or even to the HA1A Mark II to an extent. Okay, I should say that I think I still prefer the PS Vane in the HA1A Mark II as well, because it's a little bit smoother presentation because of its warmth and all of that, and a little bit less separation and all that sort of thing than the Rays. Just has a little bit smoother, more relaxed presentation. This one, that's particularly important in the HA1A Mark II because this is a more forward, aggressive, and dynamic sounding amp. And so this kind of helps chill it out a little bit, where this doubles down on that and just makes it more aggressive. Now, you could try the more mellow output and the Ray tubes on here. So that's completely up to you as well. But I liked the balance of this tube in this amp with the more aggressive output of the 1A Mark II, which is just off camera over here, okay, hidden by the volume knob. Okay, there's that. Back to the point that I was making. Project Ember is a preamp. GSX Mini as the amp, Hexie as the headphone. The differences between these two stood out a lot more on that signal chain than they did coming from the direct headphone outputs of any of these. Okay, and that is where I start to see that, okay, for some listeners who like the slightly brighter presentation but don't want to go as crazy into the brightness as like a Gentle X Gold Lion will bring you, then maybe $180 for a matched pair. When you're already talking about a $2,000 amplifier and a, what was a $3,500 and is now a $2,000 silly good deal. $2,000 for these, by the way. See my review in the link in the description. That's where it started to make sense, and where the value of these started to come out a little bit more, I think. So for this kind of stuff, I'm not going to tell you straight up don't buy one of these, but it does just feel to me like these are a little bit too much money for what you get from the direct headphone outputs of like amps at this level that I'm talking about here. But these will scale up and give you more and more positive sonic results as signal chain quality increases that the PS Vane didn't give me. Okay, so if you have more expensive gear, higher end gear and all of that, and you want just a little bit more brightness, a little bit more clarity, okay, and like just a tighten up your spatial presentation a little bit more, then $180 for a match pair of these might make a little bit more sense, okay, in my opinion. All right, so we'll go ahead and leave the sonic stuff here. If I have more to report on the origin and all of these that I'm looking into before public presentation, that might come at the end here. It might not. We'll see. But I will go ahead and give a quick wrap up here. The Ray tubes are good, right? They are decent tubes. The 6SN7 does the warming of the sound, enhances spatial presentation a little bit and all of that. The only real drawback to this one for the money is that the base is a little bit thicker in diameter than some of its competitors. And so if you have a recessed, tube socket in your piece of gear, you may find a little bit more difficulty getting this in and out. All right. The Ray tubes here, the 12AU7s are pretty good, but whether or not they are worth the money, I think really depends on the gear that you're using them with. The more expensive your gear, I think the more these become worthwhile. They're really hard for me to just straight up recommend for a TA20 Plus, a Project Ember, a KNHA 1A Mark II level kind of thing. Okay, so we'll go with that, but they can be really excellent. Okay, but they are going to brighten the sound a little bit as compared to some other tubes and some stock models and all that. Think Genelex Gold Lion, but just not quite to that level of extreme in the brightening of the sound and that sort of thing. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and leave it there. This has been my review of the Apos Ray tubes. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment if you haven't. Check out my PayPal, my Patreon, see how you can support the channel and all that. Thanks again for watching, and as always, enjoy the music.